Earlier today, based on current guidelines from local health departments, I announced that until further notice, all schools of the Archdiocese of Chicago will be closed beginning next Monday, March 16, and all liturgical services in our parishes will be suspended as of Saturday evening, March 14. This was not a decision I made lightly. The Eucharist is the source and summit of our life as Catholics, and our schools and agencies provide essential services to many thousands across Cook and Lake counties. But in consultation with leaders from across the Archdiocese, and for the sake of the safety of our students, parishioners, and all the women and men who serve the people of the Archdiocese, it is clear that we must exercise the better part of caution in order to slow the spread of this pandemic. A new moment is upon us. A virulent contagion threatens humanity, reminding us of our fragility and our vulnerability as mortal beings. And even if we personally are not infected, all of us are affected with a growing anxiety that the supposed security of our health system has been undermined worldwide by this new virus. Our unease only increases as imposed restrictions limit our freedom of movement and activity, impacting every facet of our human existence: work, business, travel, tourism, sports, and yes, even worship. We feel defenseless and unsure about the future. That is why we are anxious. While healthcare professionals, political and economic leaders have responsibility for returning us to an acceptable level of security, each of us can help each other contain the contagion of anxiety that can quickly cause fear, panic, and yes, division in the human family. Here are some suggestions. Let's pay attention to what each of us is feeling. We all are afraid and may even feel panic. We are worried about the future as there seems to be no clear end in sight. These impulses are very real. Yet, as proven spiritual guides have often reminded us, there are two kinds of movements of the human heart: those that come from God and those that do not. The impulses or spirits that come from God stir up courage and strength, consolations, generosity, solidarity, brotherhood, and tranquility. These impulses are familiar to those generations that lived during the Great Depression and took up the struggle against tyranny in the last century. In our own time, we tapped into them after 9/11. And then there are the other movements within us that lead to despair, discouragement, panic, and fear, and demonization of others. According to Ignatius of Loyola, these spirits do not come from God and in fact move us away from God and from each other. So while we need to be honest about the impulses that are affecting us all, we do have the power to reject those interior voices that divide us and lead to panic. Instead, we should all work to find a new sense of unity by advancing all that is good in our common humanity. This is a moment to reclaim our common humanity and mine the resources of our faith. In practical terms, this means staying emotionally close to one another and recognizing that everyone is probably facing some sort of stress. Parents are stressed about their kids getting sick and their own work piling up. Kids are stressed about spending time with their families and falling behind on their homework at the risk of jeopardizing their academic standing. Older people are worried about contracting the virus and falling ill. This is a time to be gentle with one another and accompany each other emotionally. It is also a time to let ourselves be surprised by God's graces and the blessings that come from being together, from sharing our fears and hopes honestly, from spending time with one another without the stress of having to go somewhere, whether that be work or school. Pope Francis often speaks of the need to care for one another with tenderness. Claiming our common humanity in this time of crisis should also bring us together as a nation. Partisan politics have no use and are of no help in defeating a disease. Can the unity we find in combating the coronavirus help us rethink how we need to defeat other ills, violence, poverty, inequality, homelessness? Our history has taught us the perils of demonizing those who have a disease, and it serves as a caution in this moment as to how we treat the migrant and the refugee, the elderly, the child in the womb, the poor, the sick, and the homeless. Can this moment prompt a national examination of how we care for those on the margins rather than blaming them or ignoring them? And this is a moment to deepen our own spiritual lives as members of the body of Christ by making a commitment, as I do today for you, that we will pray for each other. I have asked our Office of Worship to prepare resources for prayer in the home during these days, and these will be posted on our webpage, archchicago.org. The days of Lent aim at drawing close to the sufferings of Christ, who throughout his life went out to those who were sick, even at a time when to do so was to risk being made unclean. He taught us not to fear the sick, but to make them a priority. Let us be brave in doing so. All of us can embrace this moment as an opportunity to grow in our faith and our humanity, as we admit our common vulnerability and our radical dependence on God in facing this common enemy and threat to our existence. The promise in doing so is that we will discover a new depth to all that unites us as a human family and as a people of faith, who put their trust in God, a God who has chosen to be God with us. Please continue to pray for me as I will for you. God bless you all.